When the series finale of MASH aired, it became the most watched program in American television history. And while a couple of sporting events have since surpassed it, it still ranks as the most watched scripted show, a record it'll probably retain forever. So it's not surprising CBS was very keen on continuing the show in some way. When they asked the principal actors which ones would be open to a spin-off series, Harry Morgan, William Christopher, and Jimmy Farr were the most gung-ho about it. Thus, AfterMASH was born. Lara Gelbart, who was the showrunner on MASH for the first 4 seasons, returned to develop the new show, which has since gotten a reputation as one of the worst sitcoms ever. But it's not quite as bad as its reputation suggests, though it's certainly very flawed. Some of the humor associated with MASH is still very much present here, with most of them falling to Klinger to deliver. The funniest moments involve Klinger concocting some sort of scheme, including moonlighting as a meat salesman. Colonel Potter also gets some solid zingers here and there, especially when answering to the egotistical administrator of the hospital, who's more concerned with his image than giving the patients the best possible treatment. Part of what makes AfterMASH watchable is seeing them adjust to regular civilian life. In the case of Klinger, the show even manages to explore him moving back to the United States and dealing with prejudice towards his marriage to Soon Lee, a Korean woman he met in the penultimate episode of MASH. The scenes together provide a lot of the heart of the show, which also nicely explored what it might have been like to be an immigrant during the 1950s. Like its predecessor, AfterMASH had some of its best moments when handling serious subject matter among the more comedic material. One episode, for which Larry Gelbart won a Peabody Award, dealt with how soldiers were affected by atomic radiation, and is quite effective in how it handles the episode topic. However, the series also had its fair share of problems. For one, it did not seem entirely sure of what to do with Father Mulcahy. The character was well used in MASH, as this was a good-hearted priest who finds himself in the middle of a war and dealing with a rush of casualties, and at times even he would question his usefulness and belief in God. When Mulcahy is introduced in AfterMASH, it seems like the show will take him in an interesting direction, with him succumbing to a drinking problem and trying to adjust to his lack of hearing after an incident in the MASH series finale. However, the pilot quickly solves his problems in the last scene. While Potter and Klinger usually switch between the A and B plots of a given episode, Mulcahy becomes saddled with the C plot, and on a couple of occasions, those don't even get resolved. The other major issue is that the new characters were not that interesting. Dr. Pfeiffer was a rather vanilla doctor with not much personality, and the nosy secretary, Alma Cox, did not come across as quite as big a conflict to Klinger's shenanigans. There was also the hospital administrator, who was originally the big shot and egotistic Mike D'Angelo, who in the second season was replaced by the big shot and egotistical Wally Wainwright. Though those two did get some occasionally funny lines here and there. Pfeiffer suddenly vanished partway through the first season and replaced by Dr. Boyer. While not the funniest character, he did add to the coming home theme of the series by showing somebody who had a terrible time during the Korean War and still holds that grudge when adjusting to civilian life and working in the hospital. Throughout the run of the series, the producers tried getting some of the cast members of MASH to guest star, even though most of them had already moved on at that point. Alan Alda had already gotten the ball rolling on his film career, Larry Linville said no, and Loretta Swit turned them down, among others. However, one person, surprisingly, said yes. Gary Berghoff agreed to play Radar again for an episode centered around him getting cold feet before his wedding, and frankly, I think this is one of the weaker storylines. It's not particularly funny, the plot is rather dull, and Radar doesn't even feel much like Radar. For some reason, the episode also completely forgets about the woman he met and fell for in his final MASH episode, and said he would reunite with upon his return home. Edward Winter also returned to play the eccentric Colonel Flagg for an episode in Season 2, and he actually got a good amount of laughs for his kooky turn. And much like everyone else, we see how the return home from the Korean War affected him. Now, contrary to popular belief, AfterMASH actually did very well in its first season, enough that CBS was confident that they had another long-running hit on their hands, and made it a point to meddle more in the series to capture more of the MASH magic. The oddest decision was changing the theme song, which initially sounded like this. But for the second season, they switched that nice piece of music with this dinky 80s elevator music. They also had Klinger start to wear dresses and pretend to be crazy again this season, because hey, he did that on MASH. The ratings for the second season dropped dramatically, though that was more because somebody at CBS had the bright idea of having AfterMASH compete directly against the A-Team. No, really. They even created this ad campaign to boast about the time slot change. I'm pretty sure Mr. T had the last laugh there. Despite that setback, CBS tried one more time to milk the MASH cash cow. In 1984, Walter was greenlit, which would have been a series focusing on Radar's post-war career. However, in the end, all that was produced was a pilot, and it's not hard to see why the network decided not to pick it up. For completely convoluted reasons, Radar's wife leaves him, he loses the farm, and decides to become a policeman. It makes no sense, and the pilot basically revolved around his first day on the job. The jokes just sort of lied there, and while MASH was a 50s set show with modern themes and sensibilities, Walter is a 50s set show that feels like it was made in the 50s, but not in a charming way. Instead, the whole thing just feels very old hat. Surprisingly, there is a fair share of notable names who pop up in this pilot. Dick Miller has a bit part as a bordello owner. SNL's Victoria Jackson plays a soda shop employee who would have probably been a recurring character had the series been picked up, and Ferris Bueller's father plays another policeman. The pilot was even directed by Bill Bixby. That's right, none other than Dr. David Banner was behind the camera on this. That's just random. Honestly, it feels like they had a script for a sitcom about two police officers on the job, and CBS just threw in Radar and a couple of forced MASH references to give it some name recognition. As you can see, there's a reason these two fell into obscurity, and why, unlike MASH, Fox Television probably won't release these on DVD. Honestly, both of these series are little more than curiosity pieces for MASH fans like myself, and while they are a fascinating piece of television history, it's easy to see why they did not take off and reach the heights its predecessor did. See you next time.